Good evening. Welcome to Second Wind. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors, The Old Post, Max, Fact and Fiction Books, Freddie's Feed and Read, Kinko's Copies, and the University Center Bookstore. We're very honored tonight to have with us a writer from North Carolina, David Brendan Hopes. David Hopes teaches at the University of North Carolina at Asheville. He grew up in Akron, Ohio, and received his BA degree in English from Hiram College in 1972. He received an MA and PhD from Syracuse University in British and American Literature in 1980. In 1981, he won the Juniper Prize for his book of poetry, The Glacier's Daughters, from Amherst University. He won the Southern Playwrights Award 2 years in a row, in 1986 and 1987. And his book of essays on nature, A Sense of the Morning, was published in 1988 and reissued in 1990. He has a novel that will appear in the fall of '91, entitled A Book of Songs, and another book of essays on nature, Childhood in the Milky Way, in the fall of '91. I asked David if he could provide me with some characterization of his work so I could have a lyric outburst, and he said, I will be the lyric outburst. So that we will leave it at that, and thank you. Please welcome David Hopes.
I didn't really say that. When my book of poems came out, I was really interested in reading the reviews. One person said that Mr. Hopes is incapable of writing a poem without a bird in it. And when I bristled at that and went back and looked, and it was quite right. Another person said that Mr. Hopes is part religious fanatic and part voluptuary. And I loved that, and I've kept that with me ever since. So I'm going to begin with some voluptuous bird poems and just get them. This is called Bird Bones. When I was in graduate school, I had a parrot, and a parrot's name is Capella. I named her after the star, and she would get out on this, what is that called, floor. And she'd walk around, and I wouldn't always be looking for her. And so I'd be walking through, and I'd give her a good swift kick. She'd go flying across the room, and she'd be angry, but that would be all that was wrong with her. And I began to contemplate how she could manage that. If something 70 feet tall kicked me, half a mile, I would be damaged. And so I was wondering how she managed it. So I began reading about the structural adaptations of birds, and this is the result of my research. Bird bones. The girdle is a grass leaf dried and curled. Spines whittled to a splinter, a thorn. Clavicle is a taut hair holding without weight. Wing blades are a folded feather, in a stiff wind almost flying by themselves. Girder, crossbeam, strut, the bones of birds. Swallow bones, catbird bones, willing to bear nothing. Made to lift, with that furious heart behind them, lighter than air, nimbler than light. Made to hover, veer, power, descend, home in, stoop, evade. Against them there is no force. Hammered they leap. Tumbled they gather and bunch back. Galed they seize the whirlwind and rise. Wind sledged the ash tree. Its leaves went up and its wood went down. A great wind, and the limbs were sailing. In the space from which the ash tree had fallen, I saw swifts climb like black sparks from a steel-gray stack. They were safe where they had been, under eaves, in chimneys, but the wind taunted, and they laid their bones against it for delight. Those strands, those pairings, they spiraled up the funnel of the wind, black, gray, blue, climbed to the shine above it, took their pastime in the storm. What is small enough to get around, light enough to rocket over, quick enough to enter by the worst door? Cardinal, whipped by fire on the first day, stepped into the fire. Wren, seeing her smallness among the beasts, put on fury like a coat of knives. Bunting, lost heaven, brought it down. Kingfisher saw how the world prepares and comes to nothing, poised above the water, hovering blue on blue, neither diving nor departing. Chickadee snatched seeds beneath the beating axe, ripped thistles from the bear's pelt. It is my world, my world. Thrush stole the songs that night might think the world sings against it altogether. Killdeer learned deceit, drew the hunters from her generations. Swift felt the hammer, stepped aside. Remember this, there are no fables. If you didn't hear the wind speak, you were not listening. If the stars did not warn you, you were safe at home with the doors locked tight. If you sought your soul and didn't find a small bird beating straight home forever where there is no road, you were seeking something else. And each day, impossibly, they lie down in air. They take their bit of earth up high enough to serve, insubstantial, indestructible, come down because the sky stops, not their bones. Gale from the west. Do you get geese migrations here? Okay, this is the geese coming. I was living in Syracuse at the time. The geese are coming south from the great north, and it was a tremendous wind, and I was watching them beat as hard as they could to stay in essentially the same place, but inch by inch they were making it. The geese, who from the ground seem almost hovering, are stopped between where they want and where the wind will let them. Like a runnel thwarted by uneven ground, they hammer north, veering northwest when the gale lets up an instant, beating, holding their sky, held north again, remembering in their windward eyes the lakes of Canada, northwest, northwest. Like the runnel, feeling every contour for a gap to pour through, northwest, lakeward, bugling as though heaven could be shouted down. Who am I? This is a new poem. It's called Jack Reimer. Who am I? A tramp, I guess, booting the road among the moons, sleeping by the stars and wandering the wildernesses of strange rooms. Jack the fix-it man and Jack the pimp, Jack driver, Jack snowman, Jack racketeer, Jack of the dim street where I answer to most any name I hear. Jack scholar I am, Jack of the books. I have forgotten what they say, but how they say it sticks to me that I might twist it around my way. Jack Reimer at last, son of desperate fathers for sure, making high talk to put them in so some of their voices might endure. I've walked out and I have seen the rarey show and fraud. By empty doors and neon signs, I cry the travesties of God. I turned my heart toward the town, seeing how its children cry solitary, unlovable and afraid, with their backs against the floating sky. I put myself in peril of the night, seeking a God to bear the blame. I put myself in danger of the street, to see shame walking unashamed. Jack of Eden I was called, till hunger broke the spell. Jack Galahad my name before the Christ cup sat on the shelves of hell. Jack Mystery you call me now. Like the hallows of an emerald, unlike the hallows of an emerald age, I prophesy into the world the dispensation of rage. Jack of lovers, king of hearts, crazy in the wounded town, waiting for glad day to come and lay our midnight down. I set myself to war with God, till God confronts the hopeless street, singing in cul-de-sacs and bars, hosannas for my own defeat. I spent some time in New York City. I was telling Betty about this afternoon. She can fill you in later. Oh, wait a minute. I'll save this. Since we're doing rhyme time, I used to have a friend who played in Cranberry Lake Picking and Singing Society. I don't know if you know that, but it's an old-timey music thing. Her name was Sally. And she played the spoons. She also played the auto harp, so it sounded like a musical instrument, which I thought was, a wonderful accomplishment. She played the kazoo. When Sally plays the spoons, Louis jingles good silver money in his pockets, his deep old pockets, and he says, honey, honey. When Sally plays the spoons, her bones go rat-a-tat-a-rat-a-tat, and the men at the bar look round and say, what do you think of that? When Sally plays the spoons, old Dave likes everything he hears, picks a few more pockets, and he buys a round of beers. Oh, when Sally plays the spoons, the rooms go rat-a-tat-a-rat-a-tat, and the floorboards ask the feet, now what do you think of that? And she goes drum, drum, and she goes Haley Rain. She takes the rat-a-tat apart and bangs it back again. And the old man, he says, I'll think up tunes and tunes, oh Sally, but you gotta play them spoons. The cheap ones always work the best, Chris? I spent some time in New York City a while back, and this came out of it. It's in many parts. I'm going to skip some of them. The ones that I don't even remember what they're about anymore. I read them on the page and say, who wrote this? But some of them I do remember what they're about. The impression I got out of I was actually living on the corner of 7th Avenue and 42nd Street. So if you have an idea, I should have been in some peril, but I wasn't. And not being in peril in that situation was the thing that amazed me most. The poem is called Visions from the Dreadful City. How does it survive, I wonder, with its delicate ankles in the potholes and grillworks and trash and stairwells of the city? How has it learned this unicorn so smoothly? It picks its hooves up, prances as though place made no difference. It colors the walls with its whiteness, silver in the alleys like a rush of water. A woman leads the unicorn. She is secret in the eyes. She stares at the pavement, slow as a pivot at the center of the dancing beast. It nudges her beautiful dress. It prods her sweetly with its horn. It wants her to mount and ride. The lady and the unicorn passed through the city. One night I saw what should have been all along. The street was full of voices, men, women, hand locked in hand, talking as God taught them. Voices sprung from heart as white water from a troubled river, want from beneath as spray rocked up and rainbowed. Satan, too, upon the street was speaking, but not as we expected. Mouse in a corner, gnawing dry wind, hissing, she will leave you. He will turn his back. The ghost, too, upon the street was speaking. He said, comes a mighty wind. Do not let go. If soul were a homesick lady, desire would be the steed to take her out from this midnight city. If God is God, devotion is get up and ride. Oh, the girls are fine. Black hose the pimps buy for them. None of them ugly like you hear about. Bring you coffee if the waiters won't let a drunk in. Best fuck of your life, too. The wino moved beside me at the fountain. I met one here, pretty, $20, but I didn't have it, and we did it anyway. Face broken by a John once. Geez, God, I bawled when I saw her. Don't know what since. Maybe too drunk. For God's sake, kid, give me something. His hand snaked from my wallet pocket. I let him have what the bulge was. It was a map. He took it, unfolded, studied, set out walking. Climb this hill and look. What do you see? A city beautiful and deadly. It is great. Go home. Think of the hills of your own country. Go home. The city says it. We are very great for very long. Such luck does not come twice. Maybe the city argues us to heaven. It says anyone afraid is too rich. It says hate is mist on glass. Wipe it away. It says kiss bearing down hard. It says there is a truth not in the flowers. It says there was always a city in the garden, sad lost Jerusalem, Jerusalem that shall be. It says there is no way out but through. Lay your head by me and listen. My skin like the skin of a drum will beat to you. I am not glad here. Love keeps me, the smell of your hair, how your forearm fits my throat in sleep. But it is too close. Where are they, my old cells, wood, leaf, water? Love will keep me if you would keep me with it, if you can take what my flesh says when I sleep. Because of my love, because there was no lover, he came to lie beside me, hair mingled in hair, his eyelashes brushing my closed eyes, tongue to tongue, breastbone to breastbone, down belly, stem, and root. His hand on the back of my neck pulled me into him like a dark cloud blown into a bright cloud, and then both one brightness. Always last in spring, the nighthawks bunch like bees around incandescent clusters of billboard lights, agile, wary, 2 moons on their wings, buzzing as they fly, scooping and buzzing, trying the corners to be sure. Nighthawk, swift, hungry, he nests in the heights, he crowns what is prepared, he baffles with crowing the quiet of the dark, he cries to the jammed streets, here there is room. 42nd Street. Inexplicable the joy. Walking out at morning in the strange, huge city, discovering that the street runs east and west, and the sun at the end of it bursting as though it kept a secret all night, and his light belting its way strong red from the river to the river. And how to ransack trash cans is epic at that hour. How I, with 2 donuts, bought with my own money, turned homeward, not fearing any place again. The last poem I want to read is called Something of the Flowers. Yeah, I'll do that. This is what prevented Betty from meeting me at the airport with flowers, so I thought I'd read it. I have learned something of the flowers. Not picking, not bruising, stepping carefully, inviting them to stand in for spirit and excellent women, for virtues, years, the temporary stars. I've learned their names, learned them better when the books were wrong, learned close and listened. I've wandered to their beds by night noiselessly, as long birds hunting with their eyes of fire in the dimness, stepped lightly between wet stems, careful as the earth was live black lace, the sky a shakeable black bloom. I bent over shut eyes of the flowers, I breathed them in. I decided they must be wanderers and pilgrims, seeking in the dirt and sleeping, seeking in the wind and blown away. I thought they must be women changed to flowers to bless them. How, Lord, the night enfolds her, hand on her, breath in her, dark to her dark. I thought they must be young men who would not go the plain way, shadowed, how they twist, how the light cuts off, turns them to light again. Earth, how they soared her, how the black sea floats them, they plunge the sun into her. If the flowers could ask me, I would want to dream their dreams with them one night. How simple it must be to flower. What is there to it but to let light in? Light first, simple love, palpable everywhere, descending from beyond the broken garden. I would dream of someone bending as I bend over us, watching, tasting, his breath in my throat, wondering how the bee feels, how I fill the field. My love comes and I can tell him nothing. Arms of the night press me, rain licks me open. When I awake, the sky is clear above me. Lord, who so simple made the flowers, so laborious made me. You were wrong to suppose that out of the tasks and missteps I should want at the end anything but death. I have earned something of the flowers, some mortal gratitude. Oh, how they lie back sweetly to their sleep. In April I stand in the wood with them. Not with skin, but with a mist at the end of my fingers, I touch petal, sepal, stamen, calyx, the dark gun breeding at the heart. I praise. I will let them have me when I lie down. I take them as far as I'm going, farther, find their way. I have earned something that, if put to words, is as it is to stand with them to morning. Light calls, they leap up. Teach me, I will say. little fires at my ankles like the stars. Thanks, Betty. I want to read something from this. There's no story. This is like a book of essays that you can, read little bits and pieces of. So, if you're looking for a narrative line, you're going to despair. I think that there is a narrative line, but it's subtle. But this has to do with growing up in Akron. I used to go down the creek all the time and look for bugs and stuff. And there was one particular pond that my friend Jack and I went to all the time, where in the spring the toads would breed. Have you ever seen toads breed? It's both a majestic sight and a horrible sight. It's so carnal, they sitting on one another's back, churring, and it's just something. And of course, I remember this real vividly. So this is a chapter called "The Waters Beneath." I forget why, but this is. I had a recurring dream, or rather an image at the end of dreams, that gave me comfort. Last night, that image returned after I'd forgotten it for several years. The image is this. There is a landscape, darkly luminous, as of evening through stained glass. Sharp cliffs taper to a lake. The lake is unfathomably deep and far brighter than the landscape. In it swim gigantic fish, sharks, sturgeons, sunfish, paddlefish, Devonian monsters, fierce and immense, gleaming with the colors of jewels. Sometimes in the dream I merely watch, transfixed with delight. Sometimes I feed them. The surface of the lake bent over vast, gleaming backs, hurrying to eat from my hand. One night before a journey I slept fitfully, and when finally asleep I dream. In the dream I travel on a great ocean liner. The deck rolls empty, but for me, the atmosphere turbulent with the aftermath of storm. I hear commotion to one side. I lean over the rail, peer into the water where pale white whales sport in the turbulence. I've got McVitie's crackers in my pocket, the ones with chocolate on one side, and I throw them to the whales one by one, and they eat them and stay near the boat. When, almost inconceivably, I begin to have enough of the whales and turn away, out of the sea comes another presence. It is a seal, golden like the sun rising. It begins to sing. My friend Holly and I visit the North Carolina fish hatchery in the shadow of Looking Glass Mountain. If you buy a quarter's worth of feed, the farm-bred rainbow trout will surface in their cement rivers and suffer you to run your hand down their backs and along their sides. A live trout in the water feels, well, it's not what I expected. Soft and hard at once, like wet silk stretched over iron. Phallic. Solid muscle, quick and greedy. A little boy runs over to us. I give him the rest of the feed and hold him so he can lean out over the water to touch the trout. His mother watches. She is uncomfortable, but she knows it must be done. Any creek, any puddle, I'd be there with spade and stick to change it. I built dams on the creek behind our house until I flooded the neighbors' yards. Even when admonished, I couldn't stop, but moved downstream under the cover of willows. If I wasn't damming and channeling, I broke away snags so the current run free. Anything to move or still the water, make it feel me. At one time, I thought this meant that I should be an engineer, but it wasn't that. The power I wanted was the power of transformation, the sea change. I imagined gray fish grazing in the neighbors' gardens, eels at the engines of the power mowers, our rooftops floating like dead islands of pastel. These were not, for me, images of destruction, but of redemption. I knew there was music audible only underwater. In winter, my task was to smash ice. I found a boat hook in the woods once and used it to hammer rifts over the creek. I waited for the sound of broken ice bumping downstream under the frozen shell. Evil civilizations throve under the frozen domes, and if I could open them to the light, they would perish. All would be well if the water could be made to flow. Even now, hiking, I draw invariably to creekside. I wait until no one watches. I dip my walking stick, lever rocks, dredge dead leaves into open channels. Of the four classical elements, mine is water. Not that which stands so much as that which flows. Heraclitean by nature, I peer into roadside ditches as other men peruse the stock reports in the morning paper, and for the same reasons. Saturday morning. I visit the creek we patrolled as boys. Skipping, Beyond the street, all is as it had been. The right smells, the right weeds, the right frogs yiking in amphibian indignation. The call of the right birds in the branches. I remember which flat rocks to lift up to find crayfish. Do you have crayfish up here? Okay. I remember old times. The boyhood fear when to pick up a crayfish out of the gravel was the triumph of will over caution. Others were watching. It had to be done. The old hunter's excitement quickens my fingers. I lift, they lurk, waving claws, a mere curiosity, too secure even for indignation. This surprises me inordinately. Finding a good thing unchanged makes me at first suspicious and then hysterical with gratitude. It could have been a subdivision. It could have been a Kmart. For it not to be, probably now never to be, is a peculiar and particular grace. The tadpole pond we visited as boys on the heights above the creek had been bulldozed away. Life was always tenuous at the rim of fields dedicated to a vague but spacious form of industry, scoured and stripped yearly by heavy machinery. The pond's existence may have been an accident of a stuck tire or an idle bit of power shovel. I say beside the bulldozed hollow of dry air, it doesn't matter. To me, anyhow, not having interviewed a toad or a volvox. A poet before an ecologist, I conjure a pond in air, with romantics testifying to the superiority of the disembodied. I carry it where I go. Midwinter, I make it sing with the rutting of toads. One toad species inhabits these parts, Rococo, blotched, debonair ugly, Bufo americanus, whose garden-befriending myriads seem not to have declined because of the loss of one shallow breeding pool. The unsuspected beauty of their golden eyes led medieval men to believe that the philosopher's stone, the charm that turns lead into gold, lay cradled in their skulls. Christopher Smart writes in his great, weird masterpiece, Jubilate Anno, let Tola bless with the toad, which is the good creature of God, though his virtue is in secret, and his mention is not made. Well, I mention him. May we all do so little harm, so much good, and bear our homeliness with such oblivious dignity. As I suggested earlier, every molecule of water on Earth is connected. You missed when I suggested it earlier, but I did. It's connected to every molecule of water. It is an inextricable black web, a pervading fabric, a foundation sea. God's separation of the water of creation is a material fact. The biota of the soil comprises creatures of the water, inhabiting microscopic seas that coat each grain of dust. This is the second most astonishing fact I know. What you do to a pool of standing water, you do to the world. Let's see. Okay. The field where the tadpole pond lies dry and yellow. I'm sorry if not devastated. I count my losses, rejoice that they are few, but do not altogether forgive. Even deserted, it's a holy place, a place still visited in dreams. My interest in wild preservation began there. So did my interest in myself as a moral being. It provided my first chance to act in the face of an intolerable event, a small event droll to think of now, but atrocious enough to a small boy to make the point that action is possible against atrocity. Why I remember it was Good Friday is unclear, but I do remember, and that my friend Jack and I had taken our school day off to fish in the creek. Fish is a misleading term, meaning in this context to sieve and harry the creek bed for nymphs, larvae, crustaceans, amphibians, everything in fact but fish, which were too fast and clung to the deeper pools. We seldom kept what we caught. Part of this was to balance Jesse, our neighbor who threw his catch on the garage roof to die and decay to add to his smelly but impressive collection of skeletons. He had a dog, a cat, and what he claimed was an opossum, though under the corruption it could have been everything. Part of our abstinence was that we were merely genuinely curious. Find it, hold it in your hand, drop it back into the current. But that day, there were big boys at the pond, teenagers we didn't know. It was spring, and tens of dozens of toads had come to mate and lay their ropes of eggs. The boys stood knee-deep in the green water, lifting up the mating pairs and whacking them skyward with baseball bats. Toads exploded mid-air, paying out gut and semicircles of pale blood. Some boys threw toads on the bank, where others shot them with air guns jammed down their gullets, or set them sailing with bats swung like golf clubs. A toad in agony excretes a poisonous liquid from its head. If you are a dog with a toad in your mouth, it is quite convincing. Against air guns and baseball bats, even hands, it has no effect whatever. I remember two emotions. The first, and oddly the more powerful, was the conviction that it must be an illusion, that nothing at once so horrible and so pointless could really happen. The second was a sly anger that was aware that it had to deceive superior force. I told the boys that I wanted to kill some too, and when they seemed agreeable, I ran up and pretended to pitch them over the hill into the trees. I really might have thrown one or two as a diversion, but others I nudged over the brow of the hill with my toe out of the boys' line of sight. I'd saved maybe 20 when the boys caught on. They came at me with the bats and air guns, and though I wasn't afraid they'd use them on me, I knew the time for subtlety was over. I yelled, "Now!" at Jack, as though we'd had a plan worked out all along. He watched me while I rammed toads into my pockets and under my shirt, anywhere I could carry them. When there was no toad space left, I began to run. I couldn't understand why it was so important to the boys that they have every toad, but it was, and they ran after me. Under my shirt, the toad lovers still locked thigh to thigh, rutting, churring, expelling their eggs against my skin. Part of the energy of my escape was disgust at their carnality, as you might imagine. An evil purity of obsession that respected neither my sacrifice nor their own safety. Like Hippolytus running before Atalanta, I tossed toads to one side or the other as the boys closed in, hoping somehow to save the remnant. I heard the sound of small bodies squashing under boots behind me. The boys didn't catch me. They must have given up, for I was small and slow and never could have outrun them. I pulled 7 toads from under my shirt and set them on the dry leaves of a thicket where they would be safe. They kept on rutting, though what they laid in the dryness was lost. I remember 7, a number held against the Day of Atonement. They caught Jack and killed his toads. They hit him in the belly hard enough to smash their backs without hurting him. He ran home wailing, his shirt wringing blood that I thought at first was his. I've had 3 or 4 recurring dreams, all of them beautiful. One of the tadpole pond. Despite Good Friday long ago, its return brings peace. In the dream, a forbidding wilderness engulfs the scraggly urban woods of my boyhood. Sometimes its central barrier is desert, more often swamp or steep hill, which I laboriously negotiate, longing to get beyond. Sometimes there's a green plain of vines that one swims through forever without finding the end. Though I know all these things are deadly, they are also beautiful, and I move through the wilderness with hushed solemnity. Finally, at twilight, I gain the circle of barren crags amid which lies the pond. Though the pond is the same tadpole nursery of long ago, no one would recognize it but me. It is sunk into the caldera of a mountain, radiant, holy, inaccessible. I lean over the crag to look. The body of the water lies immense and incalculably deep. It gleams profound cobalt blue, lit from beneath and within. Great fish ply the water, sharks, rays, eels, sunfish, creatures of every shape and color of light through the glass of a cathedral, ruby and topaz, cerulean, burgundy, gold, orange, black velvet. All lie radiant and holy and still, the waters churning silently with their myriads of burning life. At that moment, I feel perfection, not attained, but yielded, a free gift, overwhelming. I hold off waking to look and look.